Welcome to Amy's Romance Stories. If you're new here, comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe to join our growing family of Mafia romance story lovers. The black hood came off Isabella Miller's head, and the first thing she saw was her own face staring back at her from a gilded frame on the wall. Except it wasn't her face. Not exactly. The woman in the portrait wore diamonds that could fund a year of Isabella's life. Her hair swept into an elegant twist Isabella had never learned to do, her smile the kind that came from never wondering where the next meal would come from. Isabella's wrists ached from the zip ties. The room around her screamed old money, the kind that didn't just buy marble floors and crystal chandeliers, but centuries of power. Three men in expensive suits flanked the doorway, guns visible under their jackets. This wasn't a kidnapping for ransom. People like Isabella didn't get ransomed. They got disappeared. The door opened and an older man walked in, maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes that had watched people die without flinching. He wore his authority like a second skin, every movement deliberate, controlled. He stopped in front of Isabella, studying her face with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Remarkable," he said finally, his Italian accent thick but his English perfect. 26 years and the resemblance is still flawless. Isabella kept her face blank, a skill learned from 26 years of surviving Naples's worst streets. Show fear, and you're prey. Show anger, and you're a target. Show nothing, and maybe you walk away. The man nodded to one of his guards who cut her zip ties. Isabella rubbed her wrists but didn't move otherwise. Running would be stupid, and Isabella Miller had survived this long by never being stupid. "My name is Severo Malvetti," the man said, watching her face for recognition. Isabella gave him nothing, though she knew the name. Everyone in Naples knew the name. The Malvetti family didn't just run criminal enterprises. They were the enterprise, woven into the fabric of southern Italy like blood in water. "And you, Isabella, are my daughter." Now he got a reaction. Isabella's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Try again. I don't have a father. I have a birth certificate with a blank line and 26 years of orphanages and streets. You want to play family reunion? You grabbed the wrong girl." Severo pulled out his phone and swiped to a photograph. When he turned it toward her, Isabella's breath stopped in her chest. The woman could have been her twin, lying in what looked like a marble hallway, blood pooling beneath her head like a dark halo. Same sharp cheekbones, same full mouth, same dark eyes, except these eyes would never open again. "Her name was Serafina Malvetti," Severo said quietly. "Your twin sister. She was murdered 4 days ago in our family home." The room tilted. Isabella had spent her entire life alone, scrapping and clawing for every scrap of survival, and somewhere in a Sicilian villa there had been another version of her living in luxury. A sister. A twin. "You're lying." But her voice shook now. Severo swiped again. This time, a photo of 2 infants in matching pink blankets, barely hours old. Then another. A young woman holding those babies, her smile tired but radiant. "Your mother, Maria Teresi. She died the day you were born, and I made a choice that has haunted me for 26 years. I kept Serafina here, raised her as my heir. You I sent away, hidden in a Naples orphanage where my enemies couldn't find you." "How noble," Isabella spat. "Did it haunt you while I was stealing food to eat? While I was learning to fight off men twice my size? While I was alone every single day of my life?" Something flickered in Severo's eyes. Regret? Maybe? Guilt? "I thought I was saving your life. I was wrong." Before you judge me too harshly for what happens next, maybe hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get so much darker and you won't want to miss a single twisted second. Trust me, if you leave now, you'll regret it. Isabella stood, her street instincts screaming to run, but Severo's guards shifted, hands moving toward weapons. She forced herself to stay still. Why am I here? Why tell me this now? Because Serafina's death has created a crisis, Severo said, his voice hardening into the tone of a man used to absolute obedience. She was engaged to Andrea Gallo, the heir to the Gallo family. The marriage was meant to unite our organizations, prevent a war that would consume all of southern Italy. Without Serafina, that alliance dies, and thousands die with it. Isabella saw where this was going, and ice flooded her veins. No. You will take her place. You will become Serafina Malvetti. Absolutely not. I don't care about your alliance or your war or your dead daughter. The cruelty of her own words hit her half a second after they left her mouth, but she didn't take them back. Serafina was a stranger, a ghost. Find another way to save your empire. Severo's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The orphanage where you grew up? San Giuseppe. Do you remember Sister Lucia? How kind she was, making sure you had shoes that fit, saving extra bread for you. Dread pooled in Isabella's stomach. The Napoli Youth Center where you teach children English twice a week. 16 children between ages 6 and 12, I believe. And your friend Marco, the one who fences your smuggled goods? He has a wife and baby daughter in an apartment on Via Toledo. Isabella lunged at him. The guards had her arms before she moved 3 feet, slamming her back into the chair hard enough to crack her teeth together. You touch them and I'll kill you myself. Severo leaned down until they were eye to eye. You'll do exactly as I say, or I'll erase every single person you've ever cared about. Not quickly, not kindly. Do we understand each other? Isabella understood. She understood that this man, her supposed father, was a monster who would murder children to maintain his power. She understood that she had no choice. She understood that somewhere in this villa, her sister, the twin she'd never known existed, had died. And now Isabella would wear her skin like a costume. How long? Her voice came out flat, dead. Until I find who killed Serafina. Could be weeks, could be months. And after? After, you're free. New identity, new life. Anywhere in the world you choose. Funded generously. Severo straightened. You have 48 hours to learn to be Serafina before you meet Andrea Gallo. Ottavia will train you. The woman who entered looked to be in her late 30s, beautiful in a cold, sharp way, like a knife wrapped in silk. Ottavia Rinaldi moved with military precision, her dark eyes sweeping over Isabella with obvious disdain. This is what we're working with? Ottavia's voice dripped contempt. She looks like she crawled out of a gutter. Because I did, Isabella shot back, repeatedly. The next 48 hours were hell. Ottavia drilled Isabella relentlessly on Serafina's life, her habits, her relationships, her voice, which was slightly softer than Isabella's street-roughened tone. How she walked, shoulders back but not aggressive, elegant instead of defensive. How she held a wine glass, which fork to use. How to smile like she'd never had to check if someone was reaching for a weapon. Isabella absorbed it all with the same grim determination that had kept her alive on Naples's streets. Every detail was armor, every mannerism a shield. But at night, alone in the guest room, she watched videos of Serafina on a tablet Ottavia had provided. Serafina laughing at a charity gala, her hand on the arm of an older man. Serafina cutting a ribbon at a hospital opening, surrounded by photographers. Serafina at a family dinner, Severo kissing her forehead while she smiled up at him with obvious affection. Isabella watched her sister live the life that could have been hers and felt something crack inside her chest. Grief for a stranger who wore her face. Rage at the father who'd stolen her choice. A loneliness so profound it felt like drowning. On the second night, she found a video that gutted her. Serafina, maybe 16, filming herself in her bedroom. I keep having this dream, Serafina said to the camera, her voice thoughtful. That I have a sister somewhere. Isn't that strange? Father says I'm an only child, but the dream feels so real, like there's someone out there who's half of me. She laughed, embarrassed. I sound ridiculous. Maybe I'm just lonely. Isabella had to stop the video, her hands shaking. I was out there, she whispered to the empty room. I was right there, and you never knew. By the morning of the third day, Isabella could move like Serafina, talk like her, smile like her. But Otavia watched her with barely concealed hatred that Isabella didn't understand. You'll never be good enough to replace her, Otavia said during their final preparation session. Serafina was grace itself. You're just a street rat in designer clothes. Then I guess we'll see if Andrea Gallo notices the difference, Isabella replied coolly, though her stomach was churning. The car ride to the Gallo family estate felt like riding toward her own execution. Isabella wore a dress that cost more than she used to make in 6 months, deep emerald silk that Otavia said was Serafina's favorite color. Jewelry that felt like chains. Hair twisted up in that elegant style she'd practiced 100 times. The Gallo estate sprawled along the Naples coastline, all old stone and strategic architecture, beautiful and fortified. Inside, the formal dining room glittered with crystal and candlelight. 20 people were already seated, a mix of Malvetti and Gallo family members, all watching as Severo led Isabella inside. And at the head of the table stood Andrea Gallo. Isabella had seen photos during her training, but they hadn't prepared her. Andrea was 32, tall and lean, with the kind of face that belonged on Renaissance paintings, all sharp angles and dark intensity. He wore a perfectly tailored suit like armor, and when his eyes met hers, Isabella felt the impact like a physical blow. Those eyes were calculating, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless. He crossed to her, movements predatory and controlled, and took her hand. Serafina. His voice was deep, accented, and sent an unwanted shiver down her spine. You look beautiful, as always. He kissed her hand, lips barely brushing her skin, but his eyes never left her face. Studying, assessing. Isabella smiled Serafina's gentle smile. Andrea, it's wonderful to see you. They sat, and the dinner became an exercise in survival. Isabella navigated conversations she had no context for, smiled at inside jokes she didn't understand, and felt Andrea's attention on her like a spotlight she couldn't escape. He was testing her, subtly, but constantly. Remember that restaurant in Positano we loved? He asked, cutting into his secondo. We should go back. Isabella had no idea if Serafina loved a restaurant in Positano. That would be lovely, she said vaguely, taking a sip of wine to avoid elaborating. You cut your hair, commented an older woman Isabella's briefing identified as Andrea's aunt. Isabella's hair was exactly the same length as Serafina's in recent photos. Just a trim, she said smoothly. You seem different, Andrea said, his tone casual but his gaze sharp. More confident. I've been feeling more myself lately, Isabella replied, which was technically true and completely a lie. After dinner, Andrea took her arm and guided her away from the crowd, through glass doors onto a terrace overlooking the Bay of Naples. The view was stunning, lights reflecting off dark water. But Isabella's focus was entirely on the dangerous man standing too close. We need to talk, Andrea said, and his voice had lost all pretense of warmth. Isabella's heart hammered, but she kept her expression serene. About what? Andrea circled her slowly, like a predator studying prey. You're not Serafina. The world stopped. Isabella's training screamed at her to deny, deflect, but the certainty in his voice told her that would be pointless. I don't know what you mean. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dangerous. Serafina wore jasmine perfume. You smell like smoke and something else, something sharper. Serafina had soft hands from a lifetime of manicures. Yours have calluses here. He brushed his thumb across her palm. And here, from holding weapons or tools, I'd guess. Serafina walked like she'd never been threatened. You watch exits. You position yourself with your back protected. You move like someone who expects violence. Isabella's mind raced. Deny? Run? Her hand twitched toward the knife she'd strapped to her thigh under the dress. Pure street habit. Andrea smiled, and it wasn't kind. And Serafina would never consider stabbing me, but you just calculated if you could reach a weapon before I stopped you. So I'll ask once more. Who are you? What would you do in Isabella's position? Tell the truth to a man who could have you killed, or lie to someone who's already caught you? Drop your answer in the comments. I actually want to know. Isabella made a split-second decision. This man had already seen through the act, and more lies would only make it worse. My name is Isabella Miller. I'm Serafina's twin sister. She's dead, and Severo forced me to take her place to maintain your alliance. Andrea's expression didn't change for a long moment. Then, Serafina's dead? Murdered. 4 days ago. Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. And Severo sent you, what? Hoping I wouldn't notice he'd replaced my fiancé with a stranger? Hoping you'd care more about the alliance than the truth? Andrea laughed, sharp and bitter. At least you're honest about the manipulation. He leaned against the terrace railing, studying her. Tell me, Isabella Miller, why would I go along with this charade instead of exposing you to both families right now? Isabella met his eyes. Because whoever killed Serafina made you look weak. A man who can't even protect his own fiancé. Your reputation is damaged, and in your world, reputation is everything. You want the killer found as badly as Severo does. Andrea's smile turned genuinely amused. Smart. What else? And because I'm more interesting than Serafina was. The words came out before Isabella could stop them, bold and reckless. His eyebrows rose. Confident. Truthful. You were going to marry a woman you didn't love for politics. Now you have someone who might actually surprise you. They stared at each other. And the tension between them shifted, became something electric and dangerous. Andrea pushed off the railing, moving into her space. Here's my offer, Isabella. Play the part of Serafina convincingly for the families. In private, you help me find who killed her, because your street skills might actually be useful. In return, I don't expose you, which would get you killed slowly and painfully. And if I refuse? His smile was all teeth. I tell Severo you've already failed, and I watch what happens next. Isabella wanted to hit him, wanted to run, wanted, bizarrely, to know what that dangerous mouth would feel like on hers. Instead, she extended her hand. Deal. He took it, his grip firm and warm. Cross me, and you'll regret being born. Threaten me again, and you'll regret I was. She shot back. Andrea laughed, genuinely this time. Serafina feared me. You don't. Why? Because I've survived 26 years of hell without a powerful family protecting me. You're dangerous, Andrea Gallo, but I've faced worse with less. His eyes darkened with something that might have been respect, or might have been desire. Who are you really? Someone trying to find out who killed her sister. Are you going to help me or not? Before he could answer, the terrace doors opened. A man around Andrea's age entered, handsome but with cruel eyes. Taddeo Ricci, Isabella remembered from her briefing, a capo in a rival family. Serafina. Taddeo's voice was warm, too familiar. He crossed to her and kissed both her cheeks, his hands lingering on her arms. You look radiant. I've missed our conversations. Andrea's entire body went rigid. "Tadeo," Isabella said carefully. "How lovely to see you. I was hoping we could talk, privately." Tadeo's thumb stroked her arm. "About what we discussed last time." Isabella had no idea what they'd discussed. "Perhaps later." "It's important." Tadeo's eyes held hers with an intensity that suggested intimacy, secrets. "About our plans." Andrea moved like a striking snake, grabbing Tadeo's wrist and twisting until the other man gasped. "Serafina and I are having a private conversation. Leave." "Let go," Tadeo growled, but there was fear under the anger. Isabella saw the violence building in Andrea's face and stepped between them. "Andrea, please. He's not worth the scene." She turned to Tadeo, gentle but firm. "We'll talk another time." Tadeo jerked free, rubbing his wrist. He looked between them, suspicion crossing his features. "You seem different, Serafina. Colder." "People change," Isabella said. After he left, Andrea's jaw was clenched so tight Isabella could see the muscle jumping. What plans was he talking about? "I have no idea. I met you 3 hours ago, remember?" Serafina was keeping secrets. Andrea's voice was dangerous. From me. From her father. Maybe those secrets got her killed. The weight of what Isabella had stepped into settled on her shoulders. This wasn't just pretending to be someone else at parties. This was walking through a minefield of secrets, lies, and lethal family politics while trying to solve a murder. And the most dangerous piece on the board was standing inches away, looking at her like he couldn't decide whether to kiss her or kill her. "Take me to where she died," Isabella said quietly. "If we're doing this, if we're finding her killer, I need to see where it happened." Andrea studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. "Tomorrow, midnight, I'll send a car." He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "And Isabella? Don't make me regret this partnership." He left her standing on the terrace, her heart racing, her hands shaking with adrenaline. This was insane. This was suicide. This was the most alive she'd felt in years. Isabella returned to the dinner, played her part perfectly, and rode back to the Sicilian villa in silence while Severo asked questions she deflected with practiced ease. In her borrowed room, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about a sister she'd never known and a dangerous man who saw through every lie. Somewhere in this glittering, violent world was a killer. And Isabella Miller, the girl from nowhere, was going to find them, even if it killed her too. The next 2 weeks moved like a fever dream. Isabella spent her days playing the perfect Mafia princess, attending family meetings and charity events with a smile that never reached her eyes. Her nights belonged to Andrea and the investigation, chasing ghosts through Serafina's secret life. They discovered the coastal hotel where Serafina met Tadeo. The manager, after Andrea applied the right amount of pressure and cash, remembered the couple well. "She seemed afraid," he said, wringing his hands, "always looking over her shoulder. The last time I saw her, she was crying, asking the gentleman if he was sure it was safe." Safe. The word haunted Isabella. Her sister had been running from something, toward something, and it had gotten her killed. Andrea's tech expert traced Serafina's bank records, finding withdrawals totaling nearly 200,000 euros in the months before her death. "She was planning to disappear," Andrea said, his voice tight as they reviewed the evidence in his private study, surrounded by screens and documents. "Question is, running from what? The marriage? The family? Or something worse?" Isabella stared at a photo of Serafina, trying to understand the sister she'd never known. Maybe she found out something she wasn't supposed to know. Like what? Like how our mother really died. Andrea went still. "What do you mean?" Isabella had been thinking about it for days, pieces clicking together in ways that made her sick. "Severo said our mother died in childbirth, But women don't usually die from that in private hospitals with the best doctors money can buy. And he separated us immediately, hid me like I was dangerous to know about. What if our mother's death wasn't natural? You think Severo killed her? I think someone did. And he covered it up. Andrea leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark, intense eyes that seemed to see straight through her skin. You're not just doing this for Serafina anymore. You want revenge. Wouldn't you? I am. Every single day. The admission was quiet, raw. My brother Dante was killed 5 years ago by our uncle who thought Dante was too soft to lead. I watched him bleed out on our mother's kitchen floor and couldn't do anything because family politics mattered more than justice. He stood, moving close enough that Isabella could feel his heat. Revenge is a poison, Isabella. It keeps you alive, but it kills who you could have been. She met his eyes, refusing to back down from the intensity there. Then we're both already poisoned. His hand came up, fingers tracing her jaw with devastating gentleness. Probably. The tension between them had been building for 2 weeks, electric and dangerous. Working in close quarters, the brush of hands passing documents, late nights when exhaustion stripped away their defenses. Isabella had caught Andrea watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. She'd woken from dreams about his mouth on hers, his hands in her hair, and hated herself for wanting a man she'd met while drowning in lies. But this wasn't a lie anymore. Whatever this was between them, it was the only real thing in her life. Andrea, she whispered, and didn't know what she was asking for. He answered anyway, closing the distance and kissing her like he was claiming something that already belonged to him. Isabella gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until she forgot where she ended and he began. His hands tangled in her hair, destroying the elegant twist Atavia had taught her, and Isabella didn't care. She pulled him closer, desperate and demanding, pouring 2 weeks of fear and want and grief into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Andrea pressed his forehead to hers. This is a terrible idea. The worst, Isabella agreed, and pulled him back down. They ended up on the leather couch in his study, Isabella straddling his lap. Both of them half undressed and past the point of rational thought. Andrea's mouth was on her neck, her collarbone, places that made her forget her own name, when his phone buzzed with an alert. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Answer it, Isabella panted, or I'll shoot it. Andrea laughed against her skin, the vibration making her shiver, and checked the screen. His entire body went rigid. We need to go. Now. What is it? Security alert at the Church of Santa Chiara. Someone's breaking into the Malvetti family archives. They were dressed and armed in under 3 minutes, taking Andrea's car through Naples' winding streets, at speeds that would have terrified Isabella if she hadn't grown up running from police. The church sat on a hill overlooking the city, ancient stone and Gothic architecture that had witnessed centuries of secrets. The side door had been forced open. Andrea went in first, gun drawn, Isabella right behind him with the weapon he'd given her after their first stakeout together. The archives were in the basement, accessible through a door hidden behind the altar. Someone had gotten there first. Papers were scattered everywhere, filing cabinets forced open, the organized chaos of a desperate search. And in the center of it all stood Taddeo Ricci, holding a file folder, his face pale in the dim light. Step away from the documents. Andrea's voice was cold, lethal. Slowly. Taddeo's laugh was bitter. You have no idea what you've stumbled into. Then enlighten us. Andrea's gun never wavered. Serafina found this 6 weeks before she died. Taddeo held up the folder. The truth about how their mother, he nodded at Isabella, really died. Isabella's heart stopped. What truth? Maria Teresi didn't die from childbirth complications. She was murdered. Poisoned, to be specific. Tadeo's eyes glittered with something between rage and grief. By people in Severo's own organization, because she discovered they were skimming millions from family operations and planned to go to the authorities. The world tilted. Isabella had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was like a knife to the chest. Severo covered it up. Tadeo continued. Paid off doctors, falsified records, disappeared anyone who asked questions. And when Serafina found proof, she came to me. We were planning to expose everything, take down the people responsible, and disappear together. You were using her, Andrea said, his voice deadly quiet. Using her grief and anger to destabilize the Malvetti family so the Ricci family could move in on their territory. I loved her. Tadeo's composure cracked. I actually loved her, which is more than you ever did. She was a transaction to you, a political arrangement. Andrea's finger moved to the trigger. And yet she's dead, and you're alive. Convenient. I didn't kill her. I tried to protect her, but she wouldn't listen. She confronted someone she shouldn't have, and they murdered her for it. Who? Isabella's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Who did she confront? Before Taddeo could answer, the lights went out. Gunfire exploded in the darkness, muzzle flashes creating strobe light chaos. Isabella dove behind a stone pillar, returning fire at shapes she could barely see. Andrea was somewhere to her left, his shots precise and controlled even in the dark. Then the emergency lights kicked on, dim and red, and Isabella saw them. 6 armed figures in tactical gear, professional and coordinated. And leading them, calm as death itself, was Ottavia Rinaldi. Drop your weapons, Ottavia commanded, and her people had Isabella, Andrea, and Taddeo in a perfect crossfire. No escape, no advantage. Andrea's jaw clenched, but he lowered his gun. Isabella followed his lead, her mind racing through scenarios and finding nothing that didn't end in blood. Ottavia walked forward, picking up the folder Taddeo had dropped. She glanced through it, smiled coldly, and looked at Isabella. So you finally found it? Good. Saves me the trouble of planting it for you. You, Isabella breathed, pieces slamming together. You killed Serafina. Guilty. Ottavia's smile was serene, almost happy. Though it was harder than I expected. I'd been planning it for years, but actually, slipping the poison into her wine, watching her realize what was happening, listening to her beg me to call for help. She tilted her head. That part was surprisingly satisfying. Andrea moved, but Ottavia's people had weapons trained on him instantly. Why? Why? Ottavia's composure cracked, rage pouring through. Because I am Severo Malvetti's daughter, his firstborn. And I've spent 38 years watching that man give everything to his legitimate children while I remained the bastard enforcer, useful, but never family. The revelation hit Isabella like a physical blow. You're our sister. Half-sister. My mother was Severo's first love, before he married into the Malvetti family for power. When I was born, he had a choice. Legitimize me and lose his political marriage, or set us aside and claim the empire. Her smile was poisonous. Guess which he chose. So you killed Serafina out of jealousy? Isabella's voice shook with rage. She was your sister, and you murdered her because you wanted what she had? I murdered her because she was weak. Ottavia's shout echoed off stone walls. Planning to run away with that idiot. She gestured dismissively at Taddeo. Abandoning power and position I would have killed for. And I did. I killed for it. The mother investigation. Andrea said slowly. You fed that to Serafina. You wanted her to find it. Very good. I've been slowly destroying Severo for years, turning his own children against him. Serafina was supposed to expose him, fracture the family from within, create chaos I could exploit. Otavia's eyes glittered with malice. But she was taking too long, getting cold feet. So I eliminated her and activated the replacement. She looked at Isabella with something like satisfaction. You were supposed to fail spectacularly, the street rat exposed as a fraud, humiliating Severo and destroying the Gallo alliance. Instead, you actually proved competent. Almost annoying, really. So, you're going to kill us and what? Take over the Malvetti Empire? Isabella's hand inched toward the backup knife strapped to her ankle. Already done. I've spent years building loyalty among the soldiers, planting evidence of Severo's failures and corruptions. When they find you all dead, killed in a tragic confrontation with Taddeo Ricci who was trying to destroy the family, I'll be the loyal daughter who tried to save you. Severo will be broken, the families will demand new leadership, and I'll finally take what should have been mine from birth. You're insane, Taddeo whispered. I'm a Malvetti. Insanity is in our blood. Ottavia raised her gun, pointing it at Isabella's chest. Goodbye, little sister. At least you got a few weeks of the life that should have been yours. The shot rang out, deafening in the enclosed space. But Isabella didn't fall. Ottavia did, blood blooming on her shoulder as she stumbled back. Her people spun, looking for the shooter, and chaos erupted. Severo Malvetti stood in the archive doorway, smoking gun in hand, flanked by a dozen of his own soldiers. His face was carved from stone, ancient and terrible. Drop your weapons, now! The standoff lasted 3 heartbeats before Ottavia's people, seeing they were outnumbered and outgunned, complied. Andrea immediately retrieved his weapon, covering the room while Isabella stayed low, trying to process what had just happened. Severo walked to where Ottavia clutched her bleeding shoulder, looking down at the daughter he'd never claimed. I knew, he said quietly. I've known for 6 months that you were moving against me, the money you've been redirecting, the soldiers you've been corrupting, the evidence you planted. I knew all of it. Ottavia's laugh was half sob. Then why not stop me? Because you're my daughter, and I kept hoping you'd stop yourself. His voice cracked, showing emotion for the first time. I loved your mother. I love you. I gave you position, power, respect. But never your name, never legitimacy, never what they got. Ottavia looked at Isabella with pure hatred. She gets everything after 26 years of nothing, and I get shot for wanting what should have been mine. Severo's next words were for Isabella. I heard everything, the accusations about your mother, the conspiracy, all of it. He pulled out a thick envelope from his coat. Maria's real autopsy report, the one I've kept hidden for 26 years. You deserve the truth. Isabella took it with shaking hands. The medical terminology was dense, but the conclusion was clear. Poisoning, deliberate murder, and a note in the margin, in handwriting she recognized from documents as Severo's. I know who did this. I will handle it. Did you? Isabella's voice was barely above a whisper. Handle it? The 3 men who killed Maria are buried in unmarked graves. Their families were compensated and told they'd died in accidents. Severo's face was granite. I couldn't bring her back, but I made sure they paid. And us? You separated us, made me live in poverty while Serafina had everything. I was trying to protect you both. With Maria dead, my enemies were circling, having 2 daughters, 2 potential targets, 2 vulnerabilities. He shook his head. I thought hiding you, keeping you secret and safe, was the right choice. I funded your care, made sure you had what you needed. What I needed was family. Isabella's shout echoed. I needed my sister. You took that from both of us. Serafina died never knowing I existed. And I'll carry that forever. Silence filled the archive, heavy and suffocating. Andrea's hand found Isabella's shoulder, solid and grounding. What happens now? Severo looked at Ottavia, being handcuffed by his soldiers. You'll stand trial within the family. The penalty for killing one of our own is death. Good, Octavia spat. I'd rather die than keep living in your shadow. And you? Severo turned to Isabella. You have a choice. Stay and take your place as my daughter, as a Malvetti, with all the wealth and danger that brings. Or I'll give you a new identity, set you up anywhere in the world, and you'll never have to see me or this life again. Isabella looked at the gun in her hand, at the dead and damaged people scattered around a church archive, at the father who'd stolen her childhood in the name of protection. This world was poison, built on blood and betrayal. But she looked at Andrea too, at the man who'd seen through her lies and stayed anyway, who'd taught her to shoot and kissed her like she mattered, who'd taken bullets meant for her and made her believe in something besides survival. I need time, she said finally. Severo nodded. You have it. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Octavia was tried by the family council, found guilty, and sentenced to life imprisonment rather than death. Severo's last act of mercy for the daughter he'd failed. Tadeo was released after his information proved valuable, disappearing into witness protection with enough money to start over somewhere the families would never find him. Isabella spent those weeks in a strange limbo, staying at Andrea's estate but not quite belonging anywhere. She visited Serafina's grave every day, bringing flowers and talking to the sister she'd never known. I wish we'd had time, she said to the marble headstone. I wish I could have known you, heard your laugh, fought with you over stupid things. I'm so angry that we were stolen from each other, and I don't know how to let that go. On the 14th day, Andrea found her there. He sat beside her on the grass, quiet for a long moment before speaking. I have to tell you something, and you're going to hate me for it. Isabella's stomach dropped. What? I knew about you before Serafina died. Not everything, but enough. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Severo approached me 6 months ago, told me about the twin he'd hidden, asked if I'd be willing to work with her if Serafina's engagement fell through. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You knew. I knew there was a contingency plan. I didn't know Octavia would murder Serafina. I didn't know Severo would force you into this. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were raw with guilt. I was supposed to evaluate you, make sure you could handle the role. Everything after was supposed to be manipulation. And was it? Isabella's voice cracked. Was any of it real? It was supposed to be business. You were supposed to be a means to an end. Andrea reached for her hand and she let him take it, needing the contact even while wanting to pull away. But everything changed the moment you held a gun to Tadeo's head to cover my escape during that ambush. When you cried over a sister you'd never met. When you fought Octavia like hell itself to save my life. His thumb traced her knuckles. I was supposed to use you, Isabella, but I fell in love with you instead. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and terrifying. How do I know that's true? Isabella whispered. How do I know this isn't another manipulation? You don't. You have to choose to trust me, the same way I'm choosing to trust you with the truth that could make you walk away forever. He raised her hand to his lips. I can't offer you safety or simplicity, but I can offer you honesty from now on, and a partnership built on who we actually are, not who we pretend to be. Isabella's anger warred with the love she'd been trying to deny for weeks. This man had lied to her, been part of the conspiracy that destroyed her life. But he'd also protected her, believed in her, seen her when everyone else saw Serafina's ghost. And wasn't she guilty of the same lies? She'd deceived everyone, worn her sister's identity like armor, pretended to be someone she wasn't. Maybe love built on lies could become something real. Maybe broken people could choose to trust anyway. I'm staying, she said, surprising herself. Not for Severo, and not just for you. For me, because I'm tired of running, tired of surviving on scraps. Serafina had this life, and she was going to throw it away. I'm going to honor her by living it better. Andrea's smile was pure relief. Together? Together. But Andrea, her voice hardened. No more lies. No more manipulation. You want me? You get all of me, including the parts that don't trust easily and won't forgive betrayal. Deal. He pulled her close, kissing her with a desperation that spoke of second chances and new beginnings. I love you, Isabella Miller. The real you, not the performance. I love you too, she whispered against his mouth. Even though you're a manipulative bastard who deserves to be shot. His laugh rumbled through her. Fair. 6 months later, Isabella stood at Serafina's grave again, but everything had changed. She wore her own style now, sharper and less traditional than Serafina would have chosen. Her hair was shorter, her makeup bolder. She'd stopped trying to be her sister and started being herself, and the family respected her more for it. She'd taken over several family operations, using her street knowledge to shift them away from violence toward more strategic pursuits. Money laundering through legitimate businesses, technology investments, even some actual legal enterprises. The old guard hated it. The younger generation thrived. Andrea waited by the car, watching her with open affection that still sometimes took her breath away. They'd built something together, a partnership that balanced his calculated control with her intuitive chaos. They fought often and loudly, made up thoroughly, and trusted each other with the kind of certainty that came from seeing each other's worst and staying anyway. Ready? He called. Isabella placed one last flower on the grave. I wish you could have met him, Sarah. I think you would have liked the version of him I get to see, the one under all the ice. She touched the cold marble. I'm living for both of us now, making choices you never got to make. I hope that's okay. The wind picked up, rustling through the cypress trees, and Isabella chose to believe it was an answer. As they drove away, Isabella's hand in Andrea's, she thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago, alone, angry, surviving but not living. That girl would have taken Severo's offer and disappeared, chosen safety over risk. But she wasn't that girl anymore. She was Isabella Malvetti, daughter of Maria and Severo, sister to a ghost she carried in her heart, partner to a dangerous man who loved her chaos. She was street smart and boardroom educated, capable of violence and mercy, broken and healing all at once. They'd separated the twins at birth, one for privilege and one for survival, never imagining those two halves would come together in one woman who'd learned to navigate both worlds. And if you've made it this far without subscribing, I honestly don't know what to tell you except that you just experienced one of the most intense mafia romance stories you'll ever hear, and you should probably hit that button so you don't miss the next one. Just saying. Severo, watching from his study window as they drove away, allowed himself a small smile. Isabella had her mother's fire and his strategic mind. She'd protect the family better than he ever had, and she'd do it on her own terms. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered anyway. She's stronger than Serafina ever was, a woman's voice said, one he hadn't heard in 26 years. You chose correctly. Sister Lucia. Severo's heart hammered. The nun who'd raised Isabella, who disappeared 5 years ago. Tell Isabella her mother would be proud, and tell her the truth when you're ready, that Maria planned it all. The twins, the separation, the insurance policy of 2 daughters in 2 worlds. She knew someone would kill her for what she'd discovered, so she made sure her legacy would survive. The line went dead. Severo stood in the silence, staring at the phone, realizing that even from the grave, Maria Teresi had orchestrated the salvation of her family. Some loves transcend death, some legacies are written in blood, and some sisters find each other even after death separates them. Isabella would learn the truth eventually, but for now, Let her have peace. Let her have love. Let her have the life both twins deserved. The Malvedi Empire was in good hands, dangerous hands, loving hands. And that was enough. That's the end. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.